we're your hosts. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Yvette.
So, again, y'all, we are so excited to talk about this topic. And this is something that's very near and dear to my heart that I constantly am working on as a recovering perfectionist.
Come on.
Forgiving yourself and grace. Oh, my goodness. Let's get into it. Let's get into
Ooh.
it. I mean, just even starting with the thought around negative self-talk and grace, for me, so many things come to mind. So I can't wait to hear some of your thoughts on it, Yvette. But I'll start with like negative self-talk. Woo.
Yes.
If I had to say, to be honest with myself and you and anybody that's listening to this, if I had to say in a day how many times I participate in negative self-talk, girl, I don't even know it. Listen, I don't even know if them numbers got some commas in it. Okay. But no, seriously, it is something that I had to take notice of, especially as I started to get older. In my, I would say, late 20s, definitely in my 30s. And now I've crossed over into this next phase in my 40s. But I have noticed, like you hear, it's that little voice that sometimes you're like, hey girl, you look cute today. And then sometimes that little voice be like, girl, don't nobody, what you talking about? Don't nobody want to hear that right now. So I definitely can identify with, negative self-talk and like talking myself out of things that I know I have a talent in, talking myself out of making decisions or like resting in doubt when I already know, like I can almost predict the outcome, but you just doubt yourself and you question, your abilities, question what you're capable of doing. And really just being harder on yourself, like that perfectionism, being harder on yourself than you need to, something that I use to try to navigate that is make sure that I'm never in a place of comparison. Comparison is a thief of joy. So like really looking inward, but not inward as to what is wrong, but inward as to what do I need to, build up more? What do I need to love more about myself? Because, it starts with you. How, people treat you, how you allow them to be treated. And I think all of that stems back to that negative self-talk and what what you say to yourself. Sometimes you wouldn't even say to your worst enemy. You wouldn't say to a dog. You wouldn't say to a cat. Like, you wouldn't say it to other people. Some of the things that you say to yourself. And I know I am, guilty of that. So it's something that I have to definitely keep an eye on. What about you? I mean, what are your thoughts on this topic? And like, do you have times of negative self-talk or,
my gosh.
what happened?
My number has a commas in commas.
Yes.
Commas, more than one. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm so thankful that I've become more aware of it because I didn't even really realize at one point how much I spoke so negatively to myself. And here's a couple things that I think about when I reflect on this. One is I do think for me it's less of comparison and probably more of a trauma response where I just have had situations in my life where there was a negative thing said about me or treated negatively or treated differently, and I have internalized those things, and it happened at a very young age. So for example, it's not a secret that I grew up in a predominantly white community, and sometimes it wasn't any words it's said out loud, but it could have been behaviors that were displayed. I remember very vividly being in elementary school, and being one of just a handful of people that look like me, and raising my hand to respond to something. And, the teacher asked a question and like very eagerly raising my hand and being passed over quite often to, and not being chosen to respond. And that sent a message. Was I not smart enough? Was I not good enough? Why am I being treated this way? And when you're a kid, you don't have the experience to really understand what the underlining issues are going on. Or, I just had this thought of, you're so right. Like, we say things to ourselves that we wouldn't say to our worst enemy, or like you said, to a dog. And I think about um how I would feel if my daughters said the
Mm,
things about themselves that I say to myself. I would be like devastated that they think that way. And
absolutely.
I even sometimes certain things they might say out loud that lets me know that they're not confident in a certain area, or they're discouraged. And I'm so quick to like try to encourage them and address that
Absolutely.
negative thought that they might have. And so I'm
Absolutely.
like, how would they feel if they heard me speaking to myself the way that I do? Or how would I feel if I knew they were saying those same things to themselves? And so that's certainly something that comes to mind. Lisa Nichols was the first person that really helped frame this for me. We had the pleasure of hearing her speak.
Yes. Hmm.
Yes. And she talked about that. And I think she talked a little bit about it in her book too, one of her books. But she talked about just some techniques that she does to stop that negative self-talk. But man, it's so powerful when you take control of that. There are some days that are better than others, but
Absolutely. That's a true statement.
ooh, when you take control of that, take your power back over the thoughts that you have, them lies, that ain't nothing but the enemy, girl.
Oh, there you go. And that's the whole thing right there. That negative self talk is just that, it's deception and lies. Like, it is not
Yeah.
true. It is not
Mm-mm.
who you are. It's not how others see you,
Right.
but it's, to your point, it's experiences, our environment, different challenges that we've had that we've been able to somehow correlate. Well, they treated me this way because of that. When it
Hmm.
truly, a lot of times, how we're treated don't have nothing to do with us, but more so to
Right.
do with the other
Come
person.
on.
You know,
Yes.
so
Hmm.
it definitely is the disconnection between those things and really making that more apparent to yourself. Like, just because I was treated this way, one of the key things that I learned in therapy, and so we'll segue into kind of that component of this topic as well. One of the key things that I learned in therapy, and it's just a reminder, like, you can't punish yourself for how other people treated you. You
Hmm.
can't hold yourself hostage to feelings of guilt or shame, or even sometimes the wonder of the why. You know how you can get caught in the, well, why this happened? Well, why that? Or why my parents ain't make this choice? Why they didn't make that choice? Getting into that whole space too can cause you to sometimes internalize choices that you had no control over, nothing that you could influence, and you could only exist, live, and be. That's all you
Right.
can do in that
Yeah.
circumstance. So, one of the key things I learned in therapy was that, like, you can't hold yourself responsible for the
Yeah.
experiences that you've had, for the things that have been done to you. And you have to release those things, forgiveness of the situation, forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of even sometimes people that have hurt you. And in order for you to be released from that anchor of weight and that feeling of not being good enough or not being perfect, so that the outcome would be better. Because even
Yeah.
if you were perfect, you live with a world of imperfect people. So your
Hmm.
experience would still, be
Hmm.
impacted. So that's one of the key things that I definitely encourage anyone that has not thought about it and they are not, looking into it. Even if you think everything is all right, it is okay to have a therapist, just to have someone to talk to, a
Hmm.
thought partner, just to say, hey, this is what is going on with me. I think I'm good, but hey,
Yeah.
maybe
Hmm.
some things will come up over the course of our conversation that I want to talk a little bit more about. So you got to find the person that definitely is right for you. But for me, therapy has been a part of my life, I would say, Since my early 20s, definitely, I recognize the need for therapy individually in regards to my relationship. So, with my husband, as we were dating, we started to notice communication barriers and ways in which that we
Yeah.
may have seen communication play out that were not effective and they were not helpful in us trying to build a life together. We were clear that we wanted to build a life together, but we didn't know how, and we knew we were not going to get there with how we knew how to
Yeah.
communicate. So we
Yeah.
needed some techniques, and we needed some ideas on how to be more constructive and supportive of each other in communication when we didn't agree.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped there. And then just for myself, then just throughout my relationship, throughout my adulthood, I've just always believed in the power of really just kind of taking a step back and having
Yeah.
that time that's dedicated just for me, that I can talk to someone that's not in my family, not somebody I work with, not somebody that know me and can come back and bring up my story a little bit later on.
Okay. Right.
But somebody I can say,
All in
hey
your
now,
business. Mm-hmm.
exactly, all these folks don't nobody know how to act but me. And then they can say, yeah, you're right. Or they can say, well, actually, no.
Right.
Maybe you have some accountability in this too. So, it's good to have some checks and balances in place. So I definitely believe in therapy for that. What are your thoughts on therapy?
Oh, I think it's so spot on. I don't take advantage of it as much as I should. One thing I will say too, to add to your list of people who are not qualified as therapists, um, and maybe I should caveat this by saying this person may be qualified, they may have some qualifications, but we're not talking about your pastor either, right?
No, we're
There
talking
are
about
times when you
a
should go to your
person.
pastor for counsel and all of that,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
that oftentimes I think we've used pastoral leadership and mentorship and counseling and try to use that to replace it with actual seeking a
Mental health
therapist, yeah,
counseling. Yeah.
mental health
Mhm.
experts that can be, serve as your therapist, an actual therapist.
Yeah.
That's what their experience is, and many of them you can find are also Christian. And so if you're
Mhm.
looking for a Christ-based therapist, you can find that as well.
Absolutely.
But it's just good to go. It is good to go to someone who has no association with you other than that particular relationship, which is they're your therapist. They're not.
Absolutely.
There's no other connection that they have to you, so they don't have any other bias about you, whether it's positive or negative.
Exactly.
Um, so I do think that therapy is so wonderful because there it brings to light and helps you to explore a lot of things about yourself that maybe you just haven't taken the time to sit down and do, or you haven't had an expert help to pull those things out of you and help you reflect a little bit. They don't necessarily give you all the answers,
Great point.
and
A
prescribe to you.
reflection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they are experts at helping to allow you to reflect and think by asking the right set of questions and
And
providing you
push you kind of in a
put
direction to make you
yeah,
realize it may not be what you think. Like, you
right,
come in there with an idea on your mind made up. Well, because this happened, this is why I'm like this. And
right.
instead, it could be other things that you haven't thought about because you're so convinced on your mindset about it.
Absolutely. I remember a therapist that I had who she really just asked me some really, really good questions and gave me the space to kind of think through those questions. And her questions were guiding me down a certain path, I think. Um, just kind of pushing me to think differently about the situation. And one thing that she did say was it was about a particular individual that I was going to seek to have confront about some things that had happened. And she just said, what happens if it doesn't go the way that you wanted to? What if you don't get an apology? What if they don't they don't feel that they were wrong? Like, are you
Mhm.
prepared for that? And I was like, right.
That's a
It's
good one. I mean, yeah,
yes, yeah.
yeah.
So I started exploring that and having the conversation with her, and I realized what that closure really was about for me. It wasn't necessarily me forgiving them. per se, in terms of having that conversation because they said they were sorry, you know, and then I forgive them. No, it was about me making the conscious decision that regardless of how they respond, I have the power to forgive them, and I'm going to, so that I can heal and move on. And so having that conversation was an opportunity to express the things that I had been carrying for such a long time. And so that's an example of what therapy had done for me. And I'm so glad that she prepared me for it, because the conversation did not go the way that I thought it would when I first approached her about, when we first started talking about it. But because she had posed that question, I knew that there was a possibility. How do you forgive yourself
Oh,
then
girl.
for
Mhm.
things? And
Yeah,
how does negative self-talk kind of come into, like, where do you see that
slowly.
intersection?
Yes, slowly is the
Yeah.
answer. I forgive myself for things slowly. I
Mm.
forgive myself for things less quickly than I will
Mhm.
forgive someone else.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
and that's a shame. That really is probably a problem that I need to work on. But I really, and this is something I definitely think that was one of our early connection points that we had when we were getting to know each other as colleagues, and we were starting to get to know each other as well a little bit more outside of work. But just really having an eye for perfection and just like
Mhm.
knowing the intended outcome. And if it does not fit into the intended outcome, then it's wrong. And
Yeah.
it's just not good enough. And it's just throw it all out, you know?
Mhm.
And that is not an all or nothing attitude. And that's something I still to this day have to constantly be conscious of. How do you recover from that? Like,
Yeah.
do you say, like, is something wrong with me? I shouldn't have prepared. I didn't do all the right things. I wasted my time. You know what I'm saying? Like getting yourself into that space, I think definitely is something that you have to be
Yeah.
mindful of. Use the example we often refer back to this because it's top of mind always, but like your children.
Yeah.
Your children, you have in mind the little baby girl, the little baby
Mhm.
boy that you
Mhm.
grew for 9 months, and they're gonna come out and you're gonna be best friends. They're gonna respect you. They're gonna clean their room, all of these things that you have in mind, and then you get this child that comes out and act like somebody crossed town, and you're like, who is this alien that I've been raising this whole time, and they act like somebody on the street, you know and then, you have to come to grips with the fact that, like, you're not going to be the image that I made of you in my mind. You're going to be who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that definitely is something that I've had to reconcile. And then forgiving yourself as a parent, come on.
Ooh, I got some
What?
stories for you.
I'm
Damn,
telling you,
Chad.
forgiving yourself as a parent. Well, I'm now raising a teenager,
Mhm.
and I have had moments where I have to even come back, like the Lord to deal with me a little bit. I have to come back to myself, like, you should go apologize for the
Yes.
correction that you offered, even though it's coming from a good place and a place of intention of going in the right direction. You know, my words is quick and they can be sharp.
Come on.
So, that doesn't always land in the best space when you are trying to allow someone to grow, but also interject some things that they need along the way.
Hmm.
So I
And
definitely have learned.
build, sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to cut you off, but I
You
was
know,
going to
you go
say,
ahead.
build that mother-daughter relationship too, because you
At the
want your
same
kids
time,
to
it's
come to
very
you.
difficult.
Yes,
So,
it's very difficult.
so yeah, I mean, like, I've had to forgive myself for some
Hmm.
things, and I found in that forgiving myself allows me the opportunity to go back to my child and say, I'm sorry for that.
Hmm.
Because I find, for me, I have to forgive myself before I can even ask or go to someone else and ask for forgiveness, or say, like, hey, maybe that didn't go like you thought it was going to go, or you didn't get the best version of me during that conversation, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
So I mean, definitely forgiveness. I mean, to me, forgiveness and guilt go right hand in hand.
Ooh,
You
yes,
know,
they
it goes
do.
right hand in hand. So, like, if you got guilt and you get into negative self talk and you feeling guilty about what you did and you don't feel like it was the best thing to do, you know, you're holding the forgiveness back from yourself and even from others in some instances. It's almost like a punishment when
Yeah,
it's
it
not.
is.
You
Like
know,
you
it's a
almost punishing
gift.
yourself.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
punishing yourself. You're not forgiving yourself when really forgiveness is the gift. You know, it
Forgiveness
can
is the gift.
release you, you know.
Yes,
So,
that's so good. Forgiveness is a gift. Yes, I have one story that comes to mind, and I'll tell it real quickly, but it's a parenting one too. I have a lot. I had a lot of unforgiveness about my parenting, um, and some things that happened in the moment. But then, even as I have matured, and as I'm looking at my kids now, and I know I only have so many summers left before they're
yeah,
out of my house, and so I have some
absolutely.
guilt about, you know, rushing through like the time that was just really hard and challenging because they were little and like we were busy and I was tired and I just couldn't wait for, oh, I just
Yes.
can't wait to.
Yeah.
And so I have some recent
Yeah.
mommy guilt around that. And so I'm seeking, forgiving myself for not being present and trying to
Yeah.
change some of that, right? But there
Yeah.
was one particular situation, and I think it kind of ties in with that, this same very thing, like the being present thing. So when my girls were little, Martez was coaching. He was coaching at the collegiate level. He's an assistant coach. He traveled an awful lot. He was gone a lot during the basketball season. And my daughters were my oldest daughter was in dance. Evie was in dance at the time, and it was our kind of first real experience with dance, and she was pretty little. And I always was managing the calendar and trying to keep everything straight and organized, and sometimes I just failed, like perfectionism, right? Like I didn't like failing at managing our time and making sure we needed to be where we needed to be. I can't tell you how many times I had pulled up to doctor's offices thinking we had a doctor's appointment on a certain day or a certain time. Girl, I have done it when the office is straight up closed. I'm like, I don't know how I got this date wrong, but clearly it ain't
Same
today
here.
because ain't
Same
nobody here but us, right? And so, but this particular time, Evie, we went to her dance recital, and I thought we were early, and I was scrambling to get everything together to get her there, and I was getting her ready, and I'm like, where are these other parents at? Like, I'm here early. Where everybody else at? We missed the entire recital. I got her there. Listen, I bawled like a baby. I feel
I
so
know you
bad.
did. I know you
I
did.
got her there. She was looking forward to it, had her makeup on, the whole thing. And we went in, and I was like, this is odd because it was like one of the last performances. And I remember going over to the director and some of the staff, and I mean, my voice is crackling. And I'm like, I thought the recital started at this time. And she was like, it's they already performed. And like, and Evie was so little, like she was probably 4 or 5, like she was really young. And some of the parents were still around, and they stayed with my baby, and they did a performance on stage with her, like.
Oh,
And the staff came in, like pretty much everybody was gone except for like the parents of the girls who performed, and then the staff
oh
that
my
came in.
gosh.
And I
That
had
is
to
so
tell, it was so sweet. I had to
that's
go to Evie and be like, baby, we missed your whole recital. They already performed. I had the wrong time. And oh my gosh, I just wept and wept and wept. And I felt so bad. Like it was one of those like cry behind her back kind of situations because I didn't want her
yeah.
to see me crying. But I carried a lot of guilt for a while about things like that. There were other school things where I felt like I wasn't spending enough time with them in preparing them for math and reading and da 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 da.
Absolutely.
And because of my job, because of work and because of our circumstances. And so then I felt bad because why didn't I choose to be a stay at home mom? Why did I have to go into the workforce and just all of that too? And anyway, so those are just some examples of where I had to forgive myself. And I look back on those times that I was drowning and I just
Oh
couldn't
my
wait
goodness.
to the next thing, and I'm still drowning. I'm still
Girl,
drowning.
listen, you're making me like almost be emotional when you think about that though, because in the moment you're just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
In the like you can go back and look at pictures, you can go back and look at, all sorts of things that just jog those thoughts for you
Mm-hmm.
around how you felt. And one
Yeah.
thing that I do, rest in when I think about those moments and think about those times is, you were doing the best that you
Best you can.
absolutely could.
Yeah.
So with that,
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
have to give yourself the grace that
Mm-hmm.
you would give a friend, any other
Yeah.
mom, any other
Mm-hmm.
person that excuse me,
Yeah.
gotta be
Yeah.
crying.
You about to make me cry, girl.
Right. But like any other person,
Yeah.
because you wake up every day trying to be the best version of yourself at
Mm-hmm.
work, at home, in your relationship, in your marriage, in all the different hats that you wear.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not perfect. We do
Mm-mm.
have to have those moments where we're able to take a step back and reset and realize like, okay, something's off. I'm not focusing in the areas that are most important, and
Mm-hmm.
how do I change that? So one thing about the beauty of what you discovered when you looked at those things, and looking back, you still, with the realization that I have X amount of time left, what are you
Mm-hmm.
going to do with today? you know what
Yes.
are you going to do with today? We can do nothing about what has already passed. You can only change today.
And
So really
yes.
spending the energy in that space is really what I try to do. Because there are memories still left to be made, and
Mm-hmm.
times that are still left to be enjoyed, you know.
And you know what? That's what forgiving yourself is really about. It is about saying, I wasn't perfect over here
Yeah.
and I missed the mark. But
Mhm.
what am I going to do with today
Right.
and now, right?
Exactly.
That's really what it's about, and giving and
Exactly. And
telling that
moving
story
forward.
to yourself. Yeah, and moving forward and telling that story to yourself. What I'm so blessed by is I think about my own childhood, and
Girl, listen.
and my
Night and
mama,
day. Okay.
right, okay, first of all,
These kids all the time. Like, listen, you're doing stuff. I ain't doing stuff. I was grown.
right, and but the thing about it is I had a beautiful childhood.
Exactly.
And my mom was, girl, I thought red beans and rice was a luxury. Okay,
Yes,
that was
exactly.
some broke milk.
KFC used to be a luxury.
Okay, listen, my
Okay.
mom would try to make it work. So we
Yes,
had red beans and rice and cornbread. I didn't know we was doing
yes,
that because she ain't had no money. Baby,
exactly.
I was handling my business. I was happy to have that red beans. Right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
and I think back on her, she was always there. Her, all the sporting events and activities and things like that we did. I always stuff I didn't want to be at because she was like, "You're not quitting.
Right.
We
You're
don't quit
going.
in this family. You going things I didn't want to do." She was there, and I look at where I'm at now, and I'm like, man, my mom was doing this by herself at the
Yeah.
same place of life that I'm in right now, with less
Wow.
resources,
Yeah.
less time for
Yes.
herself, less
Yes.
support, and I didn't feel any of that. And so my prayer, and I truly believe that our kids, they know when we say we're sorry, when we might do things that hurt their feelings, things like that, where we mess up, but in totality of it all, they know that we love them and that we're pouring into them, and that they're experiencing great memories,
Right.
even in that. So what ended up happening in that story is I took Evie to Applebee's, because Applebee's is right around the corner. Took her to Applebee's. There happened to be a face painter at Applebee's that night. So
Oh.
she got her face painted, and we had ice cream and all this stuff. And I just, talked to her and told her I was sorry. And she was totally fine. Girl, then she wanted to go to Applebee's every night because she thought she was going to get her face
She
painted.
think they're doing face painting and ice
Yeah,
cream.
she thought she
But
was going to get her face painted.
that's it
But
though. I mean that's amazing. And then in those moments,
yeah.
my faith tells me that that's when God shows up. He
Yeah.
always is there for me in
Yes.
my life in your moments of imperfection. And that's another
Mhm.
thing that I lean into. Like, I don't have to be perfect because I serve somebody that is. Like
Yes,
all of
come
my, that's
on.
always my prayer and
Mhm.
my grace. It will, kind of talk about that. But, the grace that he gives is sufficient. I don't
Yes.
have to be,
I don't have
perfect
to
because
be.
whatever I'm missing, he is right there to fill in the gaps. And that's always, a part of my desire is,
Mhm.
whatever I'm missing, Lord, you fill it in,
You fill it in. Fill it
exactly.
in because
So
that helps me to be reliant on him.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yes.
I mean, his grace covers a multitude. So, on that, I would say I try now to really not necessarily, of course, forgiveness is a part of it, but I really try to rest in the place of grace. And to
Mhm.
me, that's almost implied and really to a next level of understood forgiveness. If you're resting in a place
Yes.
of grace, it's like, I come before you imperfect. I am not
Mhm.
trying to make you believe I'm perfect. I am
Mhm.
not trying to, make you or anybody else or even myself believe that I am going to complete this life without error. But
Right.
in that, I shall
Yeah.
still be confident. I shall still
Yeah.
hold my head high. I shall still be convicted in the beliefs that I know to be true about myself, about my
Yes.
family, about the direction that we're going in.
Mhm.
And, with that grace, I'm able to put one foot in front of the other, even on the hard days, and know that it ain't perfect, but it will be all right.
Yeah, that's so true. I agree. Grace, resting in grace, meaning I need grace, right?
Yeah.
We needed grace in order to
Yes.
be in right relationship with Christ.
Absolutely.
And so and we need that grace every single day
Absolute.
because we
Every
fall short
hour.
every hour. Come on,
Yes. Yes.
girl. And
I'm
then
telling you.
we need people to give us grace and we need to
Yeah.
offer grace. And so how dare we not give
Absolutely.
it to ourselves? And
Great point.
so we have to be in that place because then we're vulnerable. We're less
Mhm.
guarded. We're more open. We are more present because we're
Exactly.
like, I can't do it all. Baby, I had to take that
Yeah.
cape off. I
You
said,
can
listen,
experience so much more by having that
right.
vulnerability. Absolutely.
Yes. I'm like, whose idea was it to put super in front of a woman? Because,
No,
baby, it's
ma'am.
only one person that's supernatural, and that was Jesus.
Exactly. Amen to
Like,
that.
I'm
Yeah.
not wearing no cape. I don't want it. Burn the cape.
Absolutely.
Burn the cape. I'm not trying
Exactly.
to be perfect anymore because it's exhausting. Perfection is exhausting. And
Absolutely.
I really truly think it is a tool of the enemy because when you
Hmm.
when you when you think you're perfect, then you don't look for
Yeah.
grace,
Absolutely.
and
Because you
then
think,
you
oh, I
carry
got it.
right, and then you carry guilt when you
Yeah.
miss the mark, you
And you're
know,
always missing the mark.
and you're
Because
gonna
why?
miss the
Because you're
mark
not perfect.
all the time.
Exactly.
Yes, because I can tell you right now, the laundry in this house is it's almost a bad word today.
Telling you, listen, it's a constant situation.
And the
But yeah,
negative self-talk would tell me, how could you let this happen? How are you
exactly.
behind on this? How are
Hmm.
you not, this is not
Absolutely.
wifely. What
Exactly. How
how
are
do
you
you not
managing your
prioritize?
home?
Yes,
Are you being
how
a
are
good
you
steward of your
what
home?
will people
Not taking
think
care of
if they
yourself.
knew? Yeah, all that stuff. Well, they gonna think I got some dirty socks because I do.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
anyway, but this
Absolutely.
is
Well, that's
so
so fun.
wonderful,
You
Ashley.
made me emotional. I'm so upset with you now. No, I'm kidding.
Me too. Look, me too. It's been
Yes,
one of them
yes.
days anyway.
I'm telling
So
you, but
yes.
absolutely, this was a great topic. And the thing is, we can talk this much about like grace and forgiveness, and really just even talking about ourselves because the grace and forgiveness we give everybody else is understood. You come to me, you did something wrong, you apologize. I ain't even thought about it no more. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Yeah.
I do want to, call that out as this is really truly focused on the grace and forgiveness for yourself because we
Mhm.
know we're going to forgive and offer grace to others. And
Mhm.
sometimes when people show you who they are, you got to believe them, and that's
Right.
grace too.
Right. Right. And there are times I struggle to forgive other people, but I do think it we put ourselves last so much
For
when
sure.
it comes to extending the same grace that we give to other
To
people.
others so
Like,
freely.
yeah, to others so freely and easily, and then we harbor in our own heart, in our own heart, unforgiveness towards ourselves. And
Yeah,
it's like, how audacious, because Jesus is the one who told us we must forgive.
absolutely.
You
So we
know, and he
withhold,
demonstrated it.
right?
Yeah, how dare we withhold it from our own selves? He already died for that stuff. You know, he already
Great,
died for all the
great
things,
point.
all the
All
shortcomings
the
that we are going to
yeah,
have. Yeah.
absolutely. Great
So,
point. Very
all
good. Well, thanks
right.
for chatting with me about this. This was awesome. Very good.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
And
we'll
yes,
catch up
thank you. Yes, for
later.
tuning in. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
Hit that subscribe button, like. Definitely continue to check us out. We'll have some more topics coming soon.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.